Hello everyone and welcome back to the Spanish Sling, a podcast where we try to bridge the gap between the Spanish and Singaporean companies and encourage economic relations between them. Today we're going to talk about a fascinating and innovative topic that's getting more and more popular nowadays, e-commerce. This is why we welcome today Judith Padrós, Associate Director at MONX. So Judith, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much for having me here today.
So in the first part of the interview, we're going to talk about e-commerce in Asia. So e-commerce, we know, is an increasingly popular phenomenon and it will get more and more relevant in the future years. But what is its importance in the daily life of an Asian consumer?
Yes, so like e-commerce is really growing very fast worldwide, but especially in Asia has a very, very relevant role. Like if we see China, China is the the biggest market in all Asia, and when we think about consumption, it's already 50% of the consumption it's coming from online sales.
Wow.
So you can imagine how important it is. Then of course, if we check Southeast Asian markets, they are coming behind, but just for you to have an idea, it's going to be a triple growth in the next 5 years. So it's really coming there as well.
Wow! So we see that Asia is really popular when it comes to e-commerce. But what has been the reception in Europe in comparison to e-commerce in Asia?
Okay, so I would say that like China is leading the path, right? So European companies are looking into China. So what it happened in China 5 years ago is now happening in Europe. So for instance, for live streaming, that is something that was happening in China. Now it's just starting in Europe. So China is really leading the role. And then of course for European companies, it's also very important to understand how complex this market is. So even if it's growing fast, it's also very complex. So it's very important for foreign companies to have this into account when accessing Asia.
Exactly. So we see that Asia is some years ahead of us, ahead of Europe, but when these European companies will face the e-commerce market, the online market, they will face some challenges that they have to be aware of. So what are the challenges that you think, Judith, are the ones that Spanish companies or foreign companies need to be more aware of?
Okay, so I would say that Asia, it's like a continent, right? So it's very fragmented and also very complex, and it's also very competitive. So all competitors will be there, local brands, international brands. So you need to take that into consideration. This is the first thing. The second thing, it's about like how dynamic it is. So every day there is new trends, new channels, so you really need to be updated. And the consumer as well, you have a consumer that it's very well informed of everything.
Totally.
So then you need to be there, right? So you cannot say, okay, let's try, we do a trial and then we'll go. You really need to be in the market, and this is very important in order to be able to compete in this market. So I would say that it is very, very important to look into the market as a very strategic decision in order to be able to have results there.
Exactly. So we see that it's a really huge market, but already saturated because of the amount of companies that will be present in the e-commerce market. But there are also great opportunities that come from selling to the worldwide.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to the foreign companies when they want to start selling online to the Asian market?
Yes. So when a company comes to us and they want to set up an e-commerce, first they think, okay, it's easier to operate, right? Because it's low barriers to start. You just set up your e-commerce and you can start, right? So this is kind of what we have in our mind when we think about e-commerce. And in reality, the first advice is to stop and understand the market first, right? This is the first advice. So to check how is the market and how you want to be in this market, which channel to use and all the other things. So this is the first thing. The second thing would be to invest, to be ready to invest, because you need so, and don't expect 3 months result, right? So it's a long-term path. If you do it well, it's gonna come, but you need some time, right? And then the other thing that it's very important is to think that it's like you need to check like the overall process. So it's not only about selling, but it's also about having in mind like all steps of an e-commerce, right? So you need to see like the operation model, for instance, right? And at MONX what we do is like we help companies to set up this operation model and then to see like all the parts of it. For instance, finances is very important because the market is changing and you might have problems at some point. So you need to be prepared. So it's a market that asks you to be there and you really need to know about everything. Finances, logistics, customer service, post-sales, so it's very important to see the whole process.
Exactly.
This is a very important advice for us.
Exactly, and what the companies need to understand is that it's really a strategic decision and they need to put all their efforts into really prospering in that market. So they have to put all the best resources, investment, great people behind that. So they really need to be a really key decision for the company.
Correct, because many times you think about Asia, you think it's the market there, right? Because it's the biggest consumer market in the world right now, and the middle class, it's impressive, and at the end of the day, this is where the sales comes from, the middle class. So then it's very important to be prepared, and from an SME, a Spanish SME, or even any other European SME, the resources are limited, but you need to invest. So let's say that what you can always do is to have a 2-3 year plan where you allocate some resources. Of course, China might need more investment, but you have other options, and then allocate there and have a person, like a person in the management position that can really track what is happening in the market. And this is very, very important.
Exactly. Well, so follow Judith's advice to really prosper in e-commerce. So we have different companies, Spanish companies that listen to the podcast, and they have a wide variety of products. So for those who may be wondering whether to venture into e-commerce or not, what are the most popular products that they sell, a company sells online in Asia, and what are the least popular ones?
Okay, so it would depend a lot on the market within Asia, but just to give a general overview, there's products like healthcare, like fashion and beauty, which is very relevant for foreign brands in Asia, and then also baby products, for instance, food processing. With COVID, like all behavior has changed and it's also growing very fast, and also like electronic gadgets when it comes to Southeast Asia, right? So there's a wide variety, and for a foreign brand that wants to access the Asian markets, I think the most important would be to assess whether you are really offering quality and security, because this is like the two main features that the Asian consumer wants and that has in its mindset when thinking of European products. So let's take advantage of that, right? So it's something that can give you like a first criteria to see if you can really have a potential market in Asia. And then besides consumer goods, I would say that another path that is really growing very, very fast, it's like the B2B market, right? So it's not only if you are a Spanish company or a European company and you want to do like well in Asia, it's not only if you are a consumer goods product, but it's also if you are an industrial company. In that case, you also need to put the digital in the middle of your strategy, because many foreign companies failed because of that, right? Because they came to Asia and digital was there, but it was not key, and then others came and and they lost the market, and many of them left. And now it's even more important with COVID and all the situation we are having, on all the disruptive that we are experiencing right now.
Exactly. Also, for the B2C companies, remember quality and security, and for the B2B companies, remember to put digital into your strategy. So to conclude this first part of the interview, Judith, I want you to talk about the future of e-commerce. So how do you envision the future of e-commerce, and do you think in the physical stores and shops will become a minority, or they will disappear even?
Of course, well, we don't know. We don't know the future, but we don't know the future, but we know that the online is here to stay, right?
Mm-hmm.
The behaviors have changed, and right now nobody doubts that online is gonna be here. But the offline is gonna be here too, because, for instance, if you see like the big giants like Alibaba or JD, they are already in the offline, so they are creating like their own offline supermarkets. So they are integrating the online and the offline. If they are doing that, it's because of something, right?
Totally.
So they really want to get the data of the consumer, not only in the online, but also in the offline. So they are already integrating both strategies. And when it comes to B2B, it's the same. So at the end, personal relationships are very important, and it's going to keep like this, right? So in your B2B business, at some point, the personal relationships will stay. But of course, you need to have an omni-channel strategy, right? So the online and the offline needs to go together.
Exactly. So for all the companies, we see that the future is an omni-channel, because the online or the offline, shops are going online, and the online apps and companies are going offline as well. So we will see this mix and really interesting market ahead of us. So thank you very much, Judith, for coming and for letting the Spanish companies really understand e-commerce in Asia and maybe venture into it in the following years. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you.
Thank you.